Hello there. How are you doing today? Aren't you a fat little bumblebee? Oh, you're so cute. Please come in, have a seat. Is this your first time? Wonderful. Oh, we accept first timers all the time. In fact, we specialize in helping first timers like you. Absolutely. Please buzz in, have a seat. Would you like anything? Would you like, some nectar? We have some dew. Yes, some dew. Would you like that? No, you're good for now? Okay, wonderful. Well, what brings you in today? Okay. So you're looking for a new flower, you said. And how is your current flower? Not very good. It's overrun with aphids. How horrible. I completely understand. Is it a, do you own your current flower or are you renting? I see, and is the landlord, no, yes, of course the landlord isn't doing anything about the aphids, they don't do anything about that sort of thing. I'll be honest, I feel like, society would be a lot better without landlords lording over flowers for bumblebees. But, that's just me. So, I'm really glad you're here. I can totally help you out. I am going to get some information from you. And then we'll go ahead and I'm going to ask you a few questions in regards to the type of flower that you might like, and I'll show you some examples and what kind of vibe each flower gives, alright? Okay, well, so this is, of course, the flower finding agency. We work with so many different kinds of bees, but primarily bumblebees, such as yourself. And what we're going to do is we're going to help you find a flower to call your new home. Okay, so could I get your name? Absolutely. And can I get your current flower address? Okay. Wonderful. And could I get your income bracket? If you're okay with it, just your general income. Yes, absolutely. It's going to be important because, we need to know how much you can be pre-approved for. We'll go through the process of pre-approving you for a new flower, and that kind of thing. It does take a little bit of time, so you'll be hearing from us quite frequently, I'll say. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so pretty decent. Not too bad. Not too bad. Okay, and what else do I need from you here? Okay, could I get where, the type of flower that you currently live in? Right, yes, I need to know because sometimes we like to have this kind of information simply to try and keep bumblebees such as yourself very comfortable, and we know your history, right? We want to know what kind of history you have so that we're not recommending things to you that are inappropriate, Okay, that should be good then. Okay, so how are you doing? Are you alright? Okay, so do you have any, anything you want to tell me? Any thoughts and feelings about any kind of flowers that you might like? You're not 100% sure. Okay, well, I can give you some examples. I think that will be probably best for us to sort of go ahead and give you some examples, right? So here, I'd like to start off with a variety here. So we have here variety of flowers. These are, some classics, some a little bit more obscure. And this is simply to get an idea as to what kind of flower you would like to live in, not necessarily if they're available near here, right? Because from what I understand, you don't necessarily want to stay within the region. You're also looking for a place to really settle down, right? Maybe build a family of some kind. Right, yeah. And especially because a lot of these flowers, what's going to happen is that you can build your little mound where you, where you do the deed and whatnot, you can build it on the ground next to the flower, and a lot of these flowers end up not being bothered by that sort of thing. As a bumblebee, you should understand. So let's just start off with at the very top, right? So right here we have a rose. Now, roses are very, very common and very classic, right? It's sort of your suburban, very typical flower, right? It's if you wanted an idea as the kind of bumblebee that would live in a rose, it would be the kind of bumblebee that spends a lot of time with their faith, in the bumblebee church or the bumblebee mosque. Very faithful. They tend to have a lot of ideas as to how society should work, not necessarily how society does work. You also have, in terms of the rose, they're very closed off. They're not particularly closed off. You can host guests in a rose. It's not particularly bad or anything like that. But you can kind of see how the rose is it's a little closed off, right? And so you can host people, but you're not very welcoming. You also tend to have a reputation for being a little bit boring, a little bit basic, right? There's not a lot of commodities around roses these days, so it's just something to keep in mind if you're thinking about a rose. But one of the positives about being a rose is you get a lot of space, but not just a decent amount of space. It's not anything crazy or anything like that, but you get a lot of nice space. It's very aromatic. They're all very aromatic, but it tends to be one of the better smells. There's a lot of nectar in there, and one of the beautiful things is that it tends to be sectioned off with the petals very beautifully, right? The space ends up being used very well. So you could have your living room in between one petal, your kitchen in another petal. It's very, very well laid out, right? So you never feel too cramped, but it doesn't feel too spacious either, right? Okay. So, how did we feel about the first one? Okay. I'll keep that in mind then. Next, we have a sunflower. Sunflowers are, of course, another very common one, but I would say they're a little less common than the rose, right? Sunflowers tend to be associated with a lot of bumblebees that, let's just say, they're very into health, they're very into fitness, they're very into being a little bit crunchy, I'll say. And this is simply because where you will rest will be here, right? You're very exposed, you're very open, right? And so it tends to be a lot of polyamorous bumblebees tend to live in sort of the sunflowers. You also have very, tends to be, so it's not very, I'm just giving you some, generalizations, but if you're pretty fat, you're pretty cute, I would say you would need to be a bit more fit and a bit more skinty if you wanted to live within the sunflower, because the sunflower, if you wanted to really get in there, you need to have a little bit of, a little frailness to you. Another issue with the sunflower is, of course, it moves into the direction of the sun. So while that is nice if you are a morning person, or if you are somebody who quite enjoys being sort of burnt a little bit by the sun, you don't get a lot of protection from the sun. So sunscreen is going to be very important when it comes to this. And this is sort of... sunflowers tend to be very ranch-like, so it's a lot of empty space, right? It's very spacious, very open, and everybody can look in. And so there's no secrecy, there's no private areas. So it's just really something to keep in mind here, because as a if your home is a sunflower, then that says a lot about what kind of person you are and how you want people to interact with you, right? So you have the sunflower, and then you have the rose. Now, over here is you have the tulip. Now, the tulip, I think, is pretty interesting because it mimics the rose in its closed offness. In fact, it's more closed off. If you live here, right, you have a very small entryway, very, very small entryway, and then you have some nice space, but generally not very accommodating. You're not hosting a lot of people. You're maybe having one other bumblebee, maybe two bumblebees at a time, but you're never having, a group, right? So if you have a small family, it's great, but if you have a bigger family, it can be a bit cramped, right? You also have very, very big petals, so you have a few good rooms, a few big rooms, but it's unlike the rose. You're not having a lot of different kinds of rooms, a lot of different kinds of spaces that you can utilize. However, it's very spacious. It's incredibly spacious and incredibly private. The bees that tend to live in a tulip tend to be very closed off, tend to be very they don't want to rely on other bumblebees, the society of bumblebees. They don't want to rely on any hives. They are by themselves, and they tend to be out on their own as well, right? Like they're not near any other people. So it's just something to keep in mind here, because this tulip is, it tends to facilitate a lot of loneliness. But if you are a secret millionaire, a billionaire, perhaps you exploit a lot of people, you're evil of some capacity, being in a tulip can actually be very helpful because you're very closed off. No one can really see in. They're not really looking into you. It's not the most protective. It's simply private. It's not protective, of course. How are you feeling so far with the first three? The rose, the sunflower, and the tulip. Do you want to move on? Okay, let's go ahead and discuss these two here. These two here are a bit more obscure. This one over here is a rain lily. This is a very small flower, very modest flower. They only bloom for a small amount of time after rain, so you'll tend to be homeless for quite a while, I'll say. But one of the beautiful things about the rain lily is that it is incredibly, incredibly social. And not in the kind of way, not like the sunflower, right, where you're very open and you're very exposed. The rain lily tends to, you have a little bit of space, you have some petals to sort of hide in, but you have a lot of rain, it tends to be in groups, there tends to be a lot of rain lilies together. So you'll tend to have a community. It's very community focused, the rain lilies. Now, one of the issues with rain lilies is that you will be homeless a good portion of the time, but you'll be homeless in a community. So you'll look after each other, and you'll tend to have, very lovely chats. And, you can migrate to different rain lilies. Of course, you'll have, you purchase the one rain lily, so that will be your home. You'll have to come back at some point, but that is, of course, the rain lily. I will also say, in terms of the rain lilies, they tend to be very hardy. The flowers so far tend to need to be cultivated. Of course, they're flowers that are native to many different areas. But when it comes to these three at the top here, a lot of the time they tend to be in places, they're very popular in places that don't necessarily require them, or don't necessarily, it's not native to them, so it tends to take a lot of work. So as a bumblebee, you'll have a lot of housework to do, a lot of flower work to do. The rain lily is very low maintenance, right? You're not really paying too much attention, and if there are ne'er-do-wells who want to cut down your rain lilies when they're not blooming, they simply look like grass. So you're not really going to be able to they're going to have a harder time finding it, right? So it's a very, very good option if you're looking for something a little bit low-key and community-focused. Okay? Wonderful. Now, this one over here is a carnivorous plant. Now, you might be thinking, well, I came here to look for a flower to live in, and you're telling me to go submit myself and sacrifice myself to a carnivorous plant. That's not the case at all. We work with the National Society of Carnivorous Plants. They are a group of bumblebees that are, bridging the gap between carnivorous plants and insects, and they are doing a fabulous job, really getting over the divide between the two communities. Carnivorous plants like this are actually very helpful because what tends to happen is that you'll befriend them, right? They are lovely. They don't chat very much, but they are lovely and supportive and very solid. So what you can do is you can live in here and understand that you are you basically are their roommate, a partner. It's like a dating service, really. You're dating your own home. And what ends up happening is that a lot of people, a lot of billionaires also live in this kind of place because it has top tier security, right? A lot of bees do not like the idea of trying to, jump in here or try to, thief or, scoundrels don't really want to get in there. So it's actually very, very interesting in that regard, right? Unfortunately, because you have a lot of, billionaires who are using, what tends to happen is that they are forcing the hand of the carnivorous plants. The carnivorous plants really don't have a say in the matter, and they're being exploited themselves. So we're trying to rehabilitate a lot of these different carnivorous plants. So living in this sort of thing, you'll actually get a grant from the government to live in one of these kinds of places. So this is something to keep in mind, right? The carnivorous plant. Okay, so how are you feeling so far with the 5? You have some likes and dislikes for a lot of them. That's absolutely understandable. They're all a little bit different, I'd say. I'm just going ahead here and move on. So we have the rose, the sunflower, the tulip, the rain lily, the carnivorous plant. Let's go to this one. This is a bluebonnet. Bluebonnet is a wildflower. It is a flower generally in Southern America. And what is very lovely about the bluebonnet is that it is many different flowers in one stem. So what ends up happening is that you will either purchase the whole thing, become a landlord yourself, or you can purchase one of these in a sort of condo situation. And so what ends up happening is that you'll have a lot of neighbours. It's not particularly community focused, but you'll have your own small space. They tend to be very cheap. They tend to be very they're very easily installed and very easy to, very low maintenance, similar to the rain lily. But the rain lily is sort of, one bumblebee, one rain lily. This is many bumblebees, one bluebonnet, right? So, if you're really into sharing or you simply don't have the funds, I would say that the bluebonnet tends to be the bigger thing to go after. This tends to be the thing that I suggest for first-time buyers, first-time lookers of flowers, because it's a very low commitment, right? There are many bumblebees coming in and out, so if you're looking, especially if this is your first time living on your own in a flower, this might be a good way for you to be around other bees without necessarily committing to a community in some capacity, So it's just something to keep in mind, really. I'd also say that the bluebonnet itself can sometimes, because of the deep blue, and sometimes they can get a bit purpley, it tends to be very, for a delicate bumblebee such as yourself, they can get a bit dark and a bit intense on the eyes. So sometimes you'll end up having to get bumblebee glasses if you live in the bluebonnet, but it's really not that bad, and that kind of defect is not that important really when it, in the grand scheme of things. Okay, so last one here, of course, is going to be a bee balm. Yes, a bee balm. So this is very, very popular among bees. It's very exotic. You can kind of see it right here. It has a lot of nectar within the center here. It's very spiky here in the middle, and then you've got some petals that are folded down, right? So what ends up happening for bee balm is that it's currently the fad, it's the trend, right? All bees want to live in bee balms right now because, it's very exotic. It says you're with the times, and it says, social media, Bumblebee social media is honestly going crazy for them. So a lot of influencers, a lot of bee influencers tend to live in bee balms, right? But one of the issues with bee balms is simply the fact that, it's not reliable, right? These have been around for so long, but the bee balm, yes, it has existed for many a millennia, but we bees haven't exactly. As a society of bees, it hasn't been on their radar. So it's just, do you want to go with the new, with the bee balm, or do you want to go with something a bit more classic? Or do you want to go with some of these other ones that are a little bit more, niche case flowers for you? Okay, so let's go over them again. It's the rose, the sunflower, the tulip, the rain lily, the coniferous plant, the bluebonnet, and the bee balm. Okay, let me write down what your thoughts are. Yeah, so what did you think of the rose? Okay. Now, what did you think of the sunflower? Okay. And what did you think of the tulip? The rain lily? And the coniferous plant. What about the bluebonnet? Okay. And lastly, what about the bee balm? Yes, the bee balm. Okay, the bee balm. Okay, so then I can just do this, and then just a bit of extra. Yes. That would work best here. Wonderful. Okay, great. Okay, so I shall contact you with some suggestions. I'm going to, of course, send you, all the information that you might need. You'll also need a login to our, our system, so that you can see the different flowers that are available, that are on sale. And I will help you look for them, and we'll get together. Once you find some that you particularly enjoy, of the particular flowers that you are interested in from the ones that we discussed, then we'll go ahead and visit them, take a look, see what kind of damage has been done, if there's been aphids in the past, that kind of thing. And then we'll go ahead and go from there, yeah? Wonderful. I look forward to continuing to work with you. And honestly, I am so excited for you and your journey as a bumblebee. Okay, wonderful. Well, you have a great one, and I will see you soon, okay?